first speaker of the day, I must introduce him. He's been with us since quite some time, and he is, we call him as higher education and international education expert, as you can read that on your screens too. He's got about 2.5 decades of leadership experience. He's connected with education, international education particularly, and he's in teaching, higher education administration, project management, high impact educational practices, recruitment and admissions, domestic and international outreach, partnership building, student services management. I mean, the works you can imagine any kind of education activity which has happened or which will happen, he's been associated with, he's experienced with. He's currently an independent consultant in the field of international education and is fairly active on leadership development committee and as trainers for leaders at NAFSA. All of us who are connected directly or indirectly today with education businesses, we understand fully and the value of what NAFSA is all about. It's the world's largest body for international education advocacy. Now, with that, without spending too much time on with you, I will bring Dr. Ravi Srimas. I will request him to come on board and show himself up so that he can start showing up what he feels like as to how US, which is the most admirable, most sought after country for all in the South Asian zones, how it is currently and how it's going to work like in the future. Over to you, Dr. Ravi. Dr. Ravi. Hi, I welcome you on board. It's a fairly very early morning for you as I see you. Dr. Ravi, you are muted, so I request you to please unmute yourself. Dr. Ravi, you are muted.
Yes, I'm finally unmuted. Thank you, Edwin. Good evening, folks. I am speaking to you from Houston, Texas, where it is only 5:40 a.m. So
5:40 a.m. So our very early good morning to you, sir.
Okay, good. I am still working on my first cup of coffee, so thinking that I was going to be closer to the end of the program, but I've been moved up front. So the topic is of interest to me, since my work these days is primarily as a consultant. I work with students, different organizations, as well as colleges and universities in a couple of different countries. So I would like to stick to the expectations and make sure that I cover or address those things that I have been asked. So if you would run my PowerPoint slides, because I'm not able to do it from my end.
Admin, can you please help us out, please? Admin, request your help, please.
So when we think about United States as a country, a destination for students who wish to pursue their higher education, what we do have to keep in mind is that despite some of the changes that have taken place both in the United States as well as elsewhere, we do have a renewed interest on part of individuals who would like to come to the United States. So I hope now you're able to see my screen. Rajiv, can you confirm?
Yes, I am able to see your screen, but just for the purpose of not diluting any focus, let me put myself on a stop video mode so that people only see you and your screen.
Okay, and all right, so in terms of student recruitment, at least keeping the year 2022 in mind, there's definitely an uptick in the number of international student applications received at US colleges and the universities. A couple of interesting things. What has happened is, while there is significant interest on part of international students who want to pursue undergraduate degrees, like bachelor's degrees, that interest seems to have declined a bit, at least for this cycle. I think it's partly because of concerns that students and parents have as well. Significant uptick has been noticed at the postgraduate level in graduate programs, master's degrees programs for sure. Something that has been widely experienced is that in the last 6 to 8 weeks, the number of applications have increased to a point where there are some slowdowns in relation to processing. University colleges have high expectations of themselves, for themselves, especially when it comes to recruiting students. And private universities too, that are so much dependent on the fees as their main source of income, are also having high goals for enrollment. Targets are high. And the international enrollment targets especially are indeed something to keep in mind. They are very positive. Universities are actively recruiting themselves. Something interesting that has happened, I'll address this again towards the end. Capabilities of universities in relation to direct recruiting have increased in recent years. But the number of universities and colleges that are doing this directly today is pretty high, and the numbers are growing. The year 2022 is especially of significant importance, especially for those who want to come to the United States. There's been an easing, if you will, on part of consulates where the number of denials to students for F1 visas have been curtailed somewhat, in the sense that there are fewer denials than there have been in the past. The other thing is that the consulates are really looking seriously at having or following the practice of not requiring interviews or physical interviews for visas. Again, there is a significant processing backlog, and that does help not having the waiver, not having the requirement of an interview. But this is being applied really very selectively, not only across countries, but also for the applicants as well. So I think students should not necessarily expect that their interview requirement is going to be waived for them. And here's another beneficial policy change. This just happened a couple of days ago. The federal government now is going to be looking at expanding the STEM OPT options for students, 22 new fields of study, mostly at the postgraduate level and also at the bachelor's level have been added. So as you know, this OPT, which is the optional practical training, allows individuals in select fields, STEM fields or STEM designated fields to be able to work in the United States for up to 2 years, as opposed to the standard 1 year. Now, maybe you can come back to this a little bit later on, but for now, something that kind of links and takes us to the next topic is about employment outlook. Economic recovery is strong, across the country, in most areas, definitely the United States. There are also lots of labor shortages in several different areas. The labor shortages in the hospitality industry, lower paying jobs at the same time. There are shortage of workers in high paying jobs, in jobs where higher levels of skills are indeed required. So there is increased hiring of graduate students at all levels. Increased hiring of college graduates at all levels. And so there are organizations in the US that keep track of the number of students and how soon they're able to get a job after graduation. And all those indicators are showing that there is active hiring that is going on directly from college. In fact, students are able to get job placements even a year before they graduate. And so obviously there is quite a bit of competition for talented workers. So another trend is that there is increased education expectations. That is, employers really want educated students with or graduates who perhaps have a professional degree, a master's degree. But more importantly, employers really want to hire those who have some kind of job experience, not necessarily full-time, especially if they have some kind of a co-op experience or if they have internship experience. These things are really highly valued. Directly recruiting students from campuses is something that we are seeing more and more. Now, it's not really done in person. Much of it is done online, whether it comes to internships or job placements. And so employers are directly working with colleges and universities in recruiting recruiting their own future employees. Another particular trend that is important for us is hiring of international student graduates. For a while there was some hesitancy or some little bit of a challenge that international students upon graduation faced in getting hired. But that seems to have gone away, and now employers are readily hiring international student graduates. So that's a little bit brief on employment outlook. From student point of view, now this is what I'm hearing, not only directly from students, but also from colleges and universities. Now, most of these concerns are really on part of students, are mainly COVID related. But there is some real changes to the capacity and ability of many colleges and universities to offer all the range of classes that they would normally do. So that kind of decrease in choice of classes is creating some difficult circumstances for students. But I think as we go into the fall 2022 academic year, this is going to change. There's some concern about the quality of online classes and also the quantity of online classes. If you're doing everything online, then obviously that is something that most students did not expect. But nevertheless, these concerns are real even for domestic students, let alone international students. Quality overall of online classes is improving. That is their for sure. And that kind of leads to the next point, which is that hybrid is here to stay. Even after COVID goes away, there's going to be significant online components that could be attached to, and probably most classes that any student would take towards a degree. And there are some benefits to this hybrid approach, and that trend is going to continue. Now, student concerns and also university college concerns have to do with outside class experiences. It's based upon the idea that learning does not stop when students leave the classroom, nor does it start when students enter a classroom. So the co-curricular experiences and extracurricular, think about extracurricular more in relation to perhaps social experiences. Co-curricular can be participating in students, clubs, and organizations, perhaps going to conferences, and things like that. So those have been rather missing for all students in the last 2 years. And so the idea is to go back to some of the key things that allow students to be successful through these outside class experiences. So universities have done all out now to make sure that those are restored for students. And for international students, I think the main key point is that this concern that's gone away is travel restrictions. There are fewer travel restrictions today than there have been in the last several months, and this trend is going to continue. Before I run out of time, let me address a couple of other things. For those of you who are professionals in this area, whether you're working at a college or university, or you will provide the services to students. you are the experts. You know a lot more, but I think there are a few things that I would like to share because these are also things that are on minds of colleges and universities in the United States. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. These are things that are faced by all kinds of organizations, and they've taken on a new meaning, especially in the last over the last year or two. Colleges and universities are also trying to figure out how to address these challenges on an ongoing basis. Approaches colleges and universities have taken are rather different. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. So one of the ways in which the colleges are addressing uncertainty when it comes to enrollment, and especially international student enrollment, is by trying to work directly with colleges and universities in the countries from where they want students. And so this is one way to that colleges and universities in the US feel that they can reduce the uncertainty because they can establish these pipelines where students can continue to come to their campus from target countries. So I think the moving away from one size fits all approach is something to do, even though it might be more efficient, its effectiveness is going to decline over time. And especially this year and going forward too, trying to really understand the challenges faced by colleges and universities and being a partner rather than just a service provider is a good way to start thinking about it. So keeping up with trends and behaviors of colleges and universities is very important. Obviously, you can't track every single college and university, but then there are ways in which it can be done. Happy to answer some of the any questions in that area if you want. One last point here that I'd like to make is focus on student life cycle. I mean, all the way from student interest to the point where a student actually goes to the country and starts studying, all the way through graduation of that particular student. If you are able to provide support, that would be a good way to enable the success of international students and really, success for your organization as well. So let me stop there and send it back to Rajiv.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. It was a very clear and crisp message that you could forward to everybody. Now, I have been over last few minutes, I've curated few questions that have come from various different channels. I'm going to, put that forward to you on behalf of the attendees. If you don't mind, please to, uh, sorry, let me repeat. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. It was a wonderful and crisp session on your side about the US as a territory. And I'm sure, yes, the way you are saying that there has been an uptick and quite some uptick seen at many places, while there have been fluctuations too. So we got to embrace the volatility that has been observed all through. And let's see about how this is being managed. So I have curated a few set of questions that have been coming to me, particularly about the US as such. Let me put that forward to you, sir, on behalf of the attendees today. First one, sir, in the recent past, especially over the last 1 year or so, there have been quite a few admission opportunities which are being thrown open by institutions out there in the US. And that are, I call this opportunity because they come with relaxed, compromised admission criteria, I should say. Like, for example, lowered or without IELTS admissions, or without GRE or without GMAT admissions, or with slightly lower CGPA. So what do you have to say about this? If yes, they do exist, and for how long they will continue to exist as an opportunity for students?
The relaxed admissions that you're talking about, Rajiv, and this is applicable to not only international students, but also domestic students.
Domestic
Okay,
students.
it's not really going to be possible for a college or a university to drop requirements only for a particular group. So if there is something that is being provided to domestic students, pretty much we can expect that it's going to be provided to international students, that is applicants, international applicants. I think where there should not be a compromise is language proficiency, right? Especially for students who are coming to the United States, if their English language proficiency skills are low, and that can create a really big problem. Now, colleges and universities, admissions offices look beyond an IELTS score or a TOEFL score to determine language proficiency of the applicants. So if they're admitting students who with the lower proficiency, it's only going to hurt them in the long run, and they know that. So, I would say don't take this as something that's going to be continued as a practice where requirements are going to be dropped. They will be returning to the levels, right? There are lots of other details associated with it, but I can at least just say that things will go back to normal.
That's so nice to hear about that. Things will go back to normal on the business curves too. Sir, there's another point which is coming up. Any particular sectors that you recommend, though you mentioned about STEM programs somewhere in the middle, but any particular sectors that you recommend should the students seek admissions for, because they will come, they have already caught up attention, or they will catch up attention in the near future? Sectors or fields or subjects?
Well, I think that those degrees and programs that have always attracted students continue to attract students, and some of them more so than previously. But I think what's also happening is that in this context, the United States and colleges and universities in the United States are a little bit behind. Most of the subjects, if you will, that are offered through postgraduate degrees or even bachelor's degrees are rather traditional in the US. European colleges and universities have been more innovative when it comes to offering more tailored degree options, right? Or newer options. I think colleges in the US and universities are beginning to do the same thing, and they're doing it really very fast. So what then becomes a difficulty is trying to understand the nature of those degrees. So, for example, if you were to look at in business schools, business analytics, right? There are dozens and dozens of colleges and universities that offer business analytics degrees. If you grab 4 or 5 at random and try to compare them, there's not a whole lot that's in common. So I think the differentiation of these degrees is happening, and that's going to be really good for students when it comes to making choices. And that also makes choice making a little bit more difficult. That's all I can say on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi.